I will be forever grateful that my mother taught me how to sew. Granted, she snapped and insulted at me the whole time, and granted, it came across as something I would need to learn somehow, rather than anything she would delight in teaching me. Still, those moments spent in sewing machines are memories I will treasure always. My mother was not always an affectionate woman, neither in word or nor touch. She made it clear from a very young age that I disgusted her. Perhaps I reminded her too much of my father, the violent criminal who up and disappeared sometime after my 5th birthday. Who knows? All I could say for sure is that the only physical contact I really had with my mother was completely utilitarian. She was forced to bathe me until I could do it myself. Sometimes our fingers touched as we passed an object between us. Practically little accidents. Never love or affection. Sewing was different. I was small when she first started teaching me, and we only had one sewing machine. She had no choice but to hoist me up onto her lap. Her arms wrapped around me from behind her so big hands should guide my little ones. It was a hug, no doubt, though far from official or intentional. Still, I savored how it felt to sit there, to be close to her. I drank the smell of her skin. On one occasion, I even tried leaning backwards, deeper into her body. "Sit up straight, girl," she snapped. "Pay attention." "Yes, ma'am," I said. I never again. I simply made myself content with the precious and a little offer. It wasn't long, however, before that much was taken away. By this time, my mother had found a new hobby, racing straight from the bottom of every beer bottle she came across. Still, for quite some time, I refused to give up hope. "Madame," I would ask, approaching her with the all-care of soldier in a minefield. Her typical response was a wordless grunt, all deserved with the acknowledgement of my presence. "Can we have a sewing lesson?" I waited for the answer, and every muscle tensed. "Fucking sewing," was all she could manage a slurred response. She reached for the indiscriminacy for an object on the table. A spoon on this occasion, pelleted to my knees. I dodged it just in time for her to crank it against the kitchen floor. "Pick it up," she demanded. I obeyed and placed the spoon directly on the brown soapy water that filled the sink. Before I could go around, she dropped her head into the table and drifted off. As time went on, I never stopped wanting to feel that closeness with my mother. As I grew desperate, it became the more important thing in my little world was to win her back somehow. And then an idea struck. It came to me one day that I was cleaning in the sewing machine. What if I made her something? A blanket? Yes, she was always complaining about how cold she was. If I made her a nice warm blanket, it should show her body not only that I cared for her and deserved her love, but also how much I had learned about sewing. The plan seemed perfect, foolproof. I started right away. I have no idea how long it took me, but I remember working on my very little project day after day, night after night. I decided to make it by stitching together some old clothes and towels we never used anymore. It seems horribly juvenile now, I know, but at the time, I was so pleased by how clever my plan seemed. Finally, it was finished. I sent the last inch of my patchwork monstrosity through the machine and then held it up. It was to get a good look at it as possible. It was magnificent. I could hardly wait to show my mother. Slowly, I pushed her open her bedroom door, gave a noisy creak as the light from the hall poured in and illuminated her supple figure, clad in the lilac bathrobe with one arm draped over her eyes. "Madame," I called softly. I stepped forward towards the bed. My mother did not answer. "Madame," I tried again, this time a bit louder. Still she said nothing. "Madame," I finally said, as loud as I dared. "What?" She whipped her arm away from me with her eyes so suddenly, I jumped back in surprise. I could see her staring at me, her eyes darkened by the shadows in the room, spearing me with hatred and the silent demand for an explanation. I swallowed hard and tried to steady my hands, which had begun to shake. Slowly, I lifted the blanket to where she could see it. "I made you something," I said as sweetly as I could manage. "A present." Her eyes narrowed at my offering. She seemed generally confused. "A what?" I swallowed again. "A present. For you. It's a blanket." The silence that followed was deafening and hurtful, but it would still trade of what happened next for eternity of it. The cackle that pleaded from my mother's throat ripped through like a shotgun blast. Her chest flexiated high off the mattress, and her head hung back, her mouth agape, as ghastly as a black hole. It was into that black hole that my sanity must have fled. Her laughter, evil and mocking, it was simply too much. I needed to silence her. Without even thinking, she stretched a blanket taut and pressed it over her face. I held it while she laughed and laughed. At her last, laughter gave way to coughs. The coughs gave way to moans, all while her hands flailed about infectiously, sometimes making contact with my ribs, but more often gasping at the sheets of either side of her. Finally, mercifully, the sound stopped and my mother fell limp. When it was done, the tears came, hot in my eyes, but cold on my cheeks. Without hesitating, I crawled into my bed beside my mother. I nestled onto the space between her and her arm and torso. The limb was loose, and complaint, as I brought it around and tucked it under my chin. I have no idea how long I'd stayed now. Hours, I now gathered long enough for my mother to cool, stiffen, and then loosen again. At times I allowed myself to drift off, and when I did, I dreamed of her. Fitful dreams, more memory than fantasy. In my moments of consciousness, I tried as hard as I could to think and drink of every ounce of fading scent, to relish my feeling of her skin. Her skin, the touch she always seemed to deny on me. It was then that a new inspiration overtook me. Why could my mother not give me in death what she could never in her life? It would be some strange and beautiful way to make up for her sins. Yes, I thought, I will make a new blanket. The first cut into my mother's flesh was the most difficult. I was so fearful that I would ruin her, but every successful slice became easier, and soon I gathered enough from her arms, chest, and the middle of my purposes. I couldn't help but sing as I sewed the pieces together, supplementing as needed to achieve the proper shape. All the while I imagined how sweet and warm it would feel to be wrapped up against my creation at last. I liked to long for so long. It would feel in a very real sense like an act of forgiveness on my mother's part. Forgiveness for having taken her life away, first by being born, and later, more literally. What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.